Hey, good morning. Thank you for joining me today, and thank you for joining my prophecy page. Today I'll give the third and final lesson on Israel, the master key to end-time prophecy. Our text comes from Daniel chapter 9, verse 24. I'm reading from the Living Bible. It says, "The Lord has commanded 490 years of further punishment upon Jerusalem and your people." The phrase "your people," of course, is referring to Daniel's kinsmen in the flesh, the natural sons of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It does not refer to the church. Then at last they will learn to stay away from sin, and their guilt will be cleansed, and then the kingdom of everlasting righteousness will begin, and the most holy place in the temple will be rededicated, as the prophets have declared. Israel is often referred to as the master key to end-time prophecies due to its central role in the biblical prophecies concerning the end times. I'd like to share some reasons as to why that Israel as a nation is considered so significant. In the last lesson, I gave biblical and scriptural text. Today, I'd like to just give some common sense reasoning. Number one, the covenants and the promises that are given to Israel. The Old Testament outlines God's covenant with Israel, emphasizing her unique purpose and future destiny. For example, Genesis 12 and verses 1 through 3 states that through Abraham, all nations would be blessed, highlighting Israel's central role in God's plan. And then there is the restoration of Israel. Many prophecies in the Old Testament predict and foretell the restoration of the nation of Israel. Ezekiel chapter 37 describes a vision of dry bones coming to life, symbolizing the revival of the nation. And this restoration is seen as a key event to fulfill the end-time prophecies. And then there's Jerusalem's importance. Jerusalem is depicted as a focal point in end-time prophecy, signifying intense global attention and spiritual significance. Zechariah chapter 12, verses 2 and 3 mention that all the nations would be gathered against Jerusalem, but it will become an immovable rock. And then there's the role of the Messiah. The future of Israel is closely tied to the return of the Messiah, who is expected to establish peace and fulfill God's promises to the nation of Israel. And their current events and prophetic content, recent global developments such as the political efforts like the Abraham Accords resonates with biblical prophecies, signaling a progression toward Israel's role in the end times. Matthew 24, the Olivet Discourse, was written to a Jewish audience, Israel, not to Gentiles. And then there's the Jewish content of Matthew's gospel. It was written with a Jewish audience in mind, highlighting the fulfillment of Old Testament prophecies. And then there in the Olivet Discourse is the temple discussion. The discourse begins with Jesus predicting the destruction of the Jewish temple in Jerusalem, which is central to the Jewish identity and worship. And later, he is describing that some abomination of desolation will be placed in the temple. As that did not happen in 70 AD, we can only look toward the future fulfillment of this prophecy by Jesus Christ, and it will happen in the nation of Israel. And then there is the reference that Christ made to the abomination of desolation and mentions the prophet Daniel, who is a very familiar figure to the Jewish readers. There's the mentioning in the Olivet Discourse of Sabbath observance. Jesus states that the listeners should be aware and pray that their journey of flight not be on the Sabbath. This certainly has nothing to do with the church, as the church, who is comprised of mainly Gentiles, does not observe the Sabbath as do the Jewish population of Israel. This is not to say that the church is made up of only Gentiles. There are many Jewish believers, but the Gentiles do not observe the Sabbath as the Jews do, according to the law of Moses. And then specifically in the Olivet Discourse, Christ makes a geographical reference telling the listeners that they should flee to the mountains of Judea, directly relate to the nation of Israel. This has a local flavor in that it is to Jewish people in the Jewish nation of Israel that are told in a specific region that they should flee. Matthew 24, verse 31 is a reference not to the gathering of the church at the second coming, but the gathering of Israel from the four corners of the earth where they were scattered. In Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 64, we read, "And the Lord will scatter you from among all people from one end of the earth to the other, and there you shall serve other gods of wood and stone, which neither you nor your fathers have known." It is the scattering to the four corners from one end of the earth to the other that Christ is referencing. From that is where Israel will be brought back from. Zechariah chapter 2, verse 6, we read, "Up, up, flee from the land of the north, declares the Lord, for I have spread you abroad as the four winds of the heaven, declares the Lord." I like to point to you the phrase, "I have spread you abroad as the four winds of the heavens." This four corners, these four winds, is referenced by Christ as the gathering is where is in relationship to this is where Israel has been scattered. Therefore, they will be gathered back together as a people at the second coming of Christ. Zechariah chapter 7, verse 14, verse 12 says, "They steeled themselves against God's revelation and the Spirit-filled sermons preached by the early prophets by the order of God, of the angel armies. And God became angry, really angry, and because he told them everything plainly and they wouldn't listen to a word that they said, I scattered them to the four winds. They ended up as strangers wherever they were. Their promised land became a vacant lot. Weeds, tin cans, and thistles, not a sign of life. They turned a dreamland into a wasteland. That is the prophecies about Israel being scattered because of their rebellion. And you will remember that is exactly the reason why the Daniel's 70 weeks or 490 years exist in the first place. Because God has scattered them due to their rebellion, he also promised to gather them from where they had been scattered. And that is the heart of what Jesus is saying in the Olivet Discourse. Isaiah chapter 11 verse 12 says, "And he shall set up an ensign for the nations, and shall assemble the outcast of Israel, and gather them together, the dispersed of Judah, from the four corners of the earth." Again, because Israel was scattered to the four winds, or the four corners, this is the prophecy that is the culmination of the 70 weeks of Daniel. God is going to gather them again back to the land promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. In Ezekiel chapter 39, verse 28, it says, "Then they will know that I am the Lord their God, because I made them go into exile among the nations, and then gather them again to their own land, and I will leave none of them there any longer." Underline the phrase, "I made them go into exile among the nations, and then gathered them again to their own land." This again points to the prophecy that Jesus said in the Olivet Discourse, that the angels would gather the people of the elect from the four corners of the earth. In Zechariah chapter 10, verse 6, it reads, "I will strengthen the house of Judah. I will save the house of Joseph. I will bring them back, because I have compassion on them. And they shall be as though I had not rejected them. For I am the Lord their God, and I will answer them." The Great Tribulation is about the nation of Israel and her rescue. Let me read to you the prophecy that Jesus made in the Olivet Discourse. Matthew 24, verse 21 says, "For then there shall be great tribulation, such as has not been from the beginning of the world until now, no, and never will be." Please underline the phrases, "there will be great tribulation," or "great trouble," or "great distress, such as has been from the beginning of the world until now." This phrase, great trouble, great distress, nothing like it since the beginning of time and the beginning of nations, is echoed in the Old Testament prophecies. First, I would read to you Jeremiah 30, verse 7. I'll read to you from the New Century Version. It says, "This will be a terrible day. There will never be another time like this." This is what Jesus echoed in the Matthew 24 Olivet Discourse account. This is a time of great trouble for the people of Jacob. And here it describes the people of Israel, not the church, people that are natural descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And then comes the promise that gives the nation of Israel hope, but they shall be saved from it. This is repeated in Daniel chapter 12, verse 1. I read to you from the Complete Jewish Bible. "Then that time comes, Michael, the great prince, who champions your people, will stand up, and there will be a time of distress, unparalleled between the time that they become a nation until that moment." Again, this echoes what Jesus was saying in the Olivet Discourse account of the Gospel of Matthew. "And at that time, your people," again, I point out that the people of Daniel were his kinsmen in the flesh, the natural sons of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and not any spiritual sons of Abraham. And Daniel was told by the angel Gabriel, "At that time, your people will be delivered. Everyone whose name is found written in the book." The word trouble, distress, that is in Daniel chapter 12, verse 1, the Orthodox Jewish Bible translates it as time of tribulation. This time of great trouble is for the people of Jacob, but they will be saved from it. At that time, your people will be delivered, everyone whose name is written in the book. Because the great tribulation in Matthew 24, verse 21, is about Israel, there are 5 conclusions that can be made. Number 1, that the Great Tribulation aligns with the Old Testament prophecies concerning Israel's future, indicating a time of great distress. And this fulfillment underscores the accuracy and reliability of biblical prophecy. Number 2, that this intense period of suffering is seen clearly as a catalyst for spiritual awakening and repentance among the Jewish people, turning their hearts back to God. And then there is the global implications. While the prophecies center on Israel, the effects of the Great Tribulation are global, and it emphasizes an interconnectedness with Israel's destiny with the rest of the world. And this underlines biblical narrative for Israel's fate, which has a broader implication for humanity. And then the Great Tribulation sets the stage for the return of the Messiah, a central hope in both Jewish and Christian eschatology. This period of tribulation leads to the ultimate deliverance and restoration promised by God. And finally, which is the very heart of my Bible lessons in this series, it is about the central role of Israel in end-time prophecies. Israel's prominence in the end-time events are reaffirmed, reflecting its significant role in God's redemptive plan. It highlights that God has not forgotten his covenant with Israel, which means that Israel is the master key to end-time prophecy. Thank you for joining me in the study. If you have any questions, please let me know. If you have any comments, I would be delighted to hear from you. And until our next lesson, you have a very blessed day.